my little helper for the day. That's Annie girl. Okay, so I'm working on the Chevy today. And what I gotta do is replace a bunch of these specialized parts. So, if you look right in there, you'll see, if I get really close, a nice little hose clamp down in there from where I had to do an emergency repair and stick in the replacement for this particular hose end, because it fractured off right there at the front edge of the steel crimped fitting and left me pumping all my coolant out right on the road. So the actual hose has a pair of marks that are supposed to match that clamp right there. You can see the marks are off on the one that goes up and becomes the hose clamped line. So that doesn't work. Part number is right there. This is very common on Chevy products. After they reach a certain age, the plastic gets tired and fails. Now, that thing is a doubled up system. You see the aluminum lines that head down, they go to the back heat exchanger in the back of the car. Each one of them is put on with those speed connections, and to do it correctly they use something that looks like this. It's 3 connections. So this plugs into the wall, this plugs into the line going to the back, and then it leaves a connector looking forward. The connector looking forward connects to either this line, this part number, or connects to this interesting little collection of parts that has that part number. So it has a small connector. This thing comes in models 4772 and 4773. The 2 version does not have the back heater, and this connector is larger. If you look at these 2 connectors side by side, you'll see the one on the right is actually a bigger connector going into the heater core. So we have to have that large connector for the heater core. This guy also has a large connector and will again go into the heater core and provide the piece coming to the back and a small connection going forward. That will connect to this guy right here, and then the whole thing connects down inside there to the edge of the water pump, which should be just barely visible from what I'm doing right now. You can see the lines go down and they go into the water pump itself. So I have to fix all of that and make it all work the right way. See if I'm getting down there. There we go. That's the look I want. Right there where they plug into the water pump. The one other line comes up here and goes into the bottom of the reservoir, so I'm going to dump fluid all over the place. I do not have a good catch basin, so life sucks, get a helmet. That's the way it is. And we'll get busy here and do some stuff. I pulled the top cover off the engine because it makes a convenient place to put the tools and gets it out of the way because it takes up even more space back there. Those little connectors are a real pain. They generally don't want to come apart, and about the only way to do it is break them. And I do have a new fitting in there that should come apart, but it is embedded so deeply in there that I doubt I can actually get to it to pull it off. But yeah, it goes all the way back into the firewall back here, and getting the speed connectors on it is nearly impossible. That's these guys right here, the speed disconnects. Anyway, let's see what we can video here is visible. That blanks some of the light down and gets it to where we're looking at what's going on inside here. Okay, so it's going to leak coolant. I'm going to end up having to wash the engine off to make it work. Let's see what we got. It's a lovely, cool fall Saturday today. It's hard to beat. The temperature's about perfect out here. Keep backing that off until it is way loose. Yep, good. Now, keep from tearing things up, I have these neat little tools that'll come in there in just a second in the view. And I found a way to get a hold of. And there's Sunex, which isn't exactly super duper quality, but they have those nice little jaws like that, which allow you to get in here, get a hold of the line, twist it, get a hold of it just back, and pull on it, which gives us that line right there. Yeah, lots of bouncing on the video, sorry. Alright, it's a nice tool, extremely handy in the one job that it does well. So this is the old line that was cut off. I just carved it. There's a new connector on there, and the sad part is it's going to be nearly impossible to get it off. I will salvage it probably after I break off the main connector. I can get to the main connector well enough. So I got to get these lines down here in the bottom broke loose and out of the way. And I think those guys are bigger or smaller than this. I don't know. Got to actually look at the connector on the piece I got to put in. At this point, I'm trying to do the disconnections of those lines using the quick disconnects, and honestly think I'm doing them the wrong direction. I think they should have been placed on the other side and pulled backwards to pop the ears. However, neither method seemed to be working no matter what I tried. The connections are very old, the plastic is very brittle and tired, so breaking them loose and taking them off is a completely viable option. The connections are not to be reused. They're all very tired, very old, and should just be given up on. I want to make note here of the Sunex pliers that I'm using for removing lines that have the 70-degree bend at the end and are curved to make a loop shape to grip tubing. They're very nice for several things, including removing wire loom plugs that are stuck into things. Nice pliers. Alright, so let me take a look here. After fighting with this for a while, I have managed to get out the three-way connection that was in there. I don't appear to have damaged the heater core at all. The pieces come out looking a lot like that, and like this guy over here, who I'm going to go over and look at. This is kind of what's left of it after you get done breaking it up. You can see the failure mode on it. It was shattering apart as I was going, so I'm fairly sure that thing wasn't too healthy anyway. So we'll put the new one in here shortly. So I'm going to fight my way through the second one, get it loose, and then I'll be able to stick the bits together back here in the back. Be back shortly. Okay, so progress has been made. They're both out of there now. Both out. The second one came out a little bit better. I had to break one band and then I was able to get it and get it to come out. So I've got the two lines back here set up. You can see this one came out fairly easily. All of that is out of the way and I can start putting the new in. So what I'm going to use, you need some kind of lubricant on the O-rings. This stuff comes from Mercury. It's supposed to be for boats, but it actually makes an excellent lubricant for rubber parts and plastic parts because it stops being slippery fairly quickly. So anyway, I will use that. We'll spray parts and we'll put her back together. I'm going to mute the audio track and overdub this here because when I was doing the project work here, I had someone fire up a weed eater behind me, so that noise was quite distracting. And while I was doing this work, I was having to sit through a conference bridge where some of the technical work that I do for a living was going in the background. A storage migration on a Saturday where I was being there as a pair of spare hands. So what you see me doing here is taking the new tees, the white one first, and greasing them up with the lube that, as noted earlier, so that the O-rings would be slippery.
when you press them into place, they have to click and snap on to both of the tubes. You have to pull back on both of those tubes to make sure the connections are actually correct. If you don't do that, as soon as the system pressurizes, the line can blow off, and that can be kind of icky. So once the white one was on, I lubed the black T, and I went ahead and repeated the procedure to stick the black T onto the line back to the back heat exchanger or heater core, and then onto the front heater core under the dashboard. Tested both, and they are good. I'm now getting the two rubber hoses that are replacements, new lines. One is a straight line with a fitting for the black T, and the other one is a commingled grouping of like 4 different pieces of pipe and some special fittings that goes into the white line. The white is actually the return line from the heater system. The black is the direct feed off of the water pump. So interestingly enough, when that line splits, as mine did, it will empty the entire coolant in the engine as much as the water pump can pick up in little less than 2 to 3 minutes. There won't be any coolant left in the engine at all. So this can be a catastrophic failure if you're at speed going down a highway, for instance. Okay, now that the lines are attached, I need to reposition the camera to take a look at what we're doing with the other attachment point down on the water pump. So I'm trying to set the camera and move the lights and get at the 2 lines that you see down in the bottom right of the view window right now. The clamp is just highlighted there. The one water line is completely in the way, and I move that out. I will now begin wrestling with those clamps down there. The back line first, which is the pressure feed from the water pump to the heater cores. It's the outflow of the pump, I would say, instead of the inlet to the pump. Get that clamp loose, which took a little while. I had to get the regular pliers. The Sunex pliers are handy for loosening the tube when it's stuck on, as they all get over time. But the pliers don't work terribly well for taking one of those spring clamps off. I didn't replace the spring clamps. They're still quite strong. They don't seem to have any issues, so there's no point in buying either new clamps or going through the process of getting the standard hose clamps with the screw that you have to tighten up to clamp the thing in place. These work just fine, and they will work fine in the future. Grab it with the pliers now, twist again. It'll eventually come loose, and we'll be able to extract the line right off of the line from the pump itself. It's going to dump some fluid. As I noted earlier, I don't have much choice. I'm going to get fluid loss. I don't have a catch pan, besides which you are literally right above the air dam at that point, so you can't really get a catch pan under it to begin with. Alright, at this point I decided to reposition the camera to try to make it a little bit easier to see. Of course, I didn't bother to turn a light on. And I'm back in there trying to get that line attached. It's hard to see, and there you can see the line, the metal fitting sticking out, and I'm trying to get that rubber line on top of there till it's in the right position. It's placed in, and it needs to have the clamp moved up and set. Which will happen shortly. There we go. Now we got some light on it so you can actually see what I'm doing. Ho ho. Right. So my hands are getting very slippery at this point from a combination of the lubricants that I was using and from the antifreeze, which is kind of slippery in its own right. Squeeze yonder clamp down. Go ahead and get it back down in there. Those clamps are kind of a pain to use when they're that tight. They'll argue with you a bit. You can't seem to get the angle on them right. Just about there and in position, and there we go. That's clamped on. I'm not particularly happy with where it is, so I decided to move the clamp back, and like most people, I'm back and forth trying to figure out what I want it to look like until I get it in the right position that I'm happy with, and we eventually get there. Here I started fighting with the other clamp, and it's not working well at all. And it took me 5 minutes or so to finally wake up to the fact that it wasn't going to work and that I should go ahead and shift over to a smarter move, which was take the entire air inlet for the engine off along with the sound dampener. Once all that is out of the way, it's much easier to work on those lines. So So if I pull that big ugly bastard out of the way, everything becomes much easier. And it ain't that hard to remove. So, there we go. It would be right under the hose, you can't see. Oh well. Let's see if we can get this guy to come loose. Do not pinch the fingers.
Can we see the
Let's bring it around to where the regular pliers can get a hold of it.
on the output of the screen is what say?
There we go. Now what I need is the big grips to rip that loose.
I want to if the script's not constructing the name, but I don't know why.
Alright. These pliers are remarkably handy for a couple of things, and that's just one of them. But the problem is going to be, here comes the flood a little. I'm trying to get this changed over as fast as possible to minimize it because it's pulling it from there. Here comes the replacement back down. That's enough to stop it from flooding away. This guy is going to have to drain out no matter what I like, because it is going to leak its way out when I take the bottom off of the reservoir anyway. Alright, in we go. So let me get a hold of this. Come on up a little. Squeeze it up tight, run it up, run it in. Now that I got all that crap out of the way, I can set this one the way I wanted it too. There. All that looks good. And the last of the reservoir is over here with all kinds of crap in the way, but hang on while I get it. There's one of them. Now, I'm going to grab this clamp. Move it. Grab this hose. Break it loose. Okay. There will be a gush when I pull that guy. Isn't that nice? Gush. As you would expect. Can't do anything about it until I get this clamp moved over. Come on, clamp. Grab again. And get it on the tank. I only half emptied the tank. That's good. Okay. Yeah, we have a dead hose coming out. I'll come back a little bit more. I think what I'm going to do is get it about where I want it. Yeah. Jam that on in, clamp it, and there we go. We have us a set of hoses, all freshed. Very nice. So now, good clean look there. That hose comes up and around and goes in. We have the two lines that should fit in here such that those marked lines right there fit just right in the holder. We have new pieces in the back. And after all that fuss, there should be no issue with lines busting and leaving me with no coolant down the road. So now what I got to do is get the garden hose in here and wash the living bejesus out of this thing so all the crap gets cleaned off, all the coolant. Thin it down going down the driveway because I don't want the doggy licking the road. And put the air system back on up here so it's all closed up and I don't get any codes. It's 200,000. I probably should go ahead and give that thing a little bit of a clean looking at it. It's not majorly dirty, but it won't hurt to have it cleaned up with a little bit of carb cleaner. Get the crud off of it. And then close her all up and she should be ready to go. Yippity skip. Be back shortly. So it's up and running now. I'm staring at that looking for any signs of leakage. I'm running unpressurized yet. And the thing I want to feel, and I do feel here, is heat going in and slightly less heat coming out, but they're getting warm like they should be. And then I got to feel the ones in the back doing the same thing. So I want to feel these lines. Nice and hot going back. Nice and hot coming back. Everything's been well rinsed to get all the crud off of it. Slight waxy smell coming from the engine coolant, which is sort of expected even though I washed it off a whole bunch. That's why it looks real wet in there. It'll warm up and that'll all go away. Air conditioner's doing its thing. I think, based on that right down in there, that we're just fine on coolant. So I'm going to go ahead and stick the lid back on it, let it run for a while under pressure and make sure it doesn't leak.